Welcome back, everybody, to the A Little Less Fear podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lino Martinez. Oh yeah, Pride Month 2021, LGBTQIA. I'm interviewing today Jen Winslow. Twitter at Jen Slowwin, that's JenSlowWin. And her IG is at Jen Slow66. Welcome, Jen. Thank you so much for being on my show.
My pleasure to be here.
The best thing about this is that we get to be supportive of our community, LGBTQIA community. It's not easy to come out. It wasn't easy for me to come out, that's for sure. And I just want to tell you, thank you very much for taking your time and for telling us your story.
My pleasure as always.
And so my first question to you is, how do you identify?
All right, I identify as a woman of trans experience. Trans woman is fine. I just happen to like the longer term.
I'm gonna have to steal that from you because I feel the same way, but I'm curious to know the difference between a woman of trans experience versus trans woman.
Yeah, I like it because it puts the woman first. So first and foremost, I am a woman. My experience as a woman is trans. It's one of those things where I'm a comedian and an actor who also just happens to be trans. So again,
True.
I like putting. I'm proud of being trans, but I don't necessarily need it to lead as a qualifier for anything else that I do.
I love that. I'm definitely gonna be changing mine. I'm gonna adopt that because it just sounds awesome. I mean, I'm a man of trans experience. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
So when did you first come out with this trans experience feeling? So yeah, when did you come out as a woman with trans experience of trans experience?
Oh, there are different stages for me. Like I knew as far back as when I was like 3 or 4, that I was different. Um, so back then, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica of the 1960s, I was a deviant and a pervert.
Oh,
Um,
geez,
that's what the 1 inch square told me when I tried to find out how I felt.
that's
Um,
awful. Oh my
yeah,
goodness, Jen.
and
Wow.
going through that time again, like I was born 66. So you go through the 70s, and that's still kind of the viewpoint of most people as well, what you're doing and right.
I'm
So
gonna I'm gonna stop you for a
yeah.
minute because I'm curious to know when you said when you were like 3, 4, and 5, like what you knew you were different. What do you mean by that? What did you feel inherently at the time? What kind of ideas or thoughts or feelings did you have? Mercury's in retrograde, full force. So yeah, what happened at that time?
Uh, so yeah, like I felt at odds with my body. I had no idea how to explain it, but I knew that if I looked at my friends that were girls, I really associated way more with them than any boys.
Uh huh.
In fact, in kindergarten, all of my friends were girls. And I had one particular friend, um, who our kindergarten class had a dress up corner. And every time that we would go in there, we would actually switch roles. And she would grab the suit jacket and that, and I would grab, I think there was like this big purple gown or purple dress in the setup in the dress up room.
Uh huh.
And that was like my first, like, you're like, oh, this is what it's supposed to be like. And she and I would talk about it,
Uh huh.
she was phenomenal.
I wonder if how she ended up identifying in the future. That'd be interesting, huh?
It's a sad story.
Oh man.
Not to bring people down, but I'm going to go ahead and
Oh
say
man.
it.
Sorry.
She actually died in kindergarten.
She
Uh,
what?
yeah, she passed away while we were still in kindergarten.
Oh
Toward the
man,
end.
I'm sorry to hear that. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Her name, I only remember her first name, which was Lori. And my memory of her and how she looked and everything is just etched into my mind because she was my first best friend.
It
Um,
sounds like she was also your first spiritual guide, guiding you
most
towards who your
definitely,
true self is.
most definitely. And the thing that, another thing, because we learn hate, that's the other thing is
Hmm.
nobody in my kindergarten class thought anything about the two
Right.
of us doing that. It was just like, oh, oh,
Yeah, kids are the
kind of
most
this,
honest and innocent. Yeah.
kind of the same, the same reaction I got when I came out as an adult. They were like, oh.
So wow, so that was your first real deal experience as far as like dressing in the quote unquote other
Right.
gender. And then so what ended up happening in your teens? So we're moving into teens, it's like the 70s now?
Yeah. So late 70s into the 80s, I'm in my teens. Um, and I lived in a small town. So literature was not vastly available. Um,
Are you
and
allowed to say what small town? Are we allowed to know?
oh yeah, that's totally cool. Muncie, Indiana. Uh,
Indiana. Whoa.
yeah. um, and we had a city, a public library, but my mom worked there, so I couldn't even go and like try to
You
get
couldn't
books
even
from
do your
other.
own research because then your mom was gonna know that you were checking things out that you shouldn't be.
That's exactly
Oh
it.
man.
um and I was born
And
fundamentally
that's before the internet, ladies and gentlemen. So
way
wow.
more. um I was also like, I was raised fundamental evangelical Baptist, so throw that on top of this. There was no information to be had, not that I could get
So
to.
you were just stuck with your feelings, only your feelings, and nobody else's no other ways of getting information otherwise.
Exactly.
That's really heavy.
And like I began experimenting, with dressing. We know the terms of the time were cross dressing and things like that, but my cousins and relatives up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, I would go up and spend time with them, and they had a dress up box, and they thought it was freaking awesome that I would like throw on dresses, and they couldn't understand because they always wanted me to come to, like, come on downstairs, like this is fun, come downstairs. And I'm like, oh no,
They
no,
were
no.
encouraging. That's great.
I was like, no, 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 no. Your parents, my parents, they cannot
Oh,
see
yeah.
this. Um, Again, because everything that I had been told and informed up to this point was that what I was doing was terribly wrong. Um, and I was a deviant of some sorts.
But did you feel like a deviant of some sorts when your other family members allowed you to try stuff on?
Not at all. It felt as natural as me sitting here talking to you right now.
That's amazing.
Uh,
Yay. I'm so glad that you had those little opportunities at least because they all really they were guiding you.
oh yeah, yeah. Um, and through the process, through the evolution process of becoming me, I mean, there are definitely tumultuous episodes within that as well. um I came out to my best friend in junior high. And this was someone, and I won't say their name just because I never do.
Sure.
um this was someone who I spent weekends at their house all the time. So they went to the same school as me, the same church as me. And I came out to him, and he accepted it, and I was like, oh, that's like really cool.
You came out saying what? What did you say to him? That you
I
like
told him
wearing
that,
dresses?
yeah, at that point, I'm like, I like to dress as a girl. I feel more comfortable. His response was like, oh, that's totally cool. My sisters are gone. Maybe, you can raid their closet tonight or whatever. So I was
Oh, that's
spending,
nice of him.
yeah, then it took a really dark turn.
Oh,
Yeah, he actually that night attacked me. And his reasoning was he knew that I wouldn't tell anyone because I was more scared of people finding out what I did than wanting to get him in trouble. or wanting to get him punished. So he had plotted. I think from the time he said, "Oh, that's totally cool," that afternoon, he knew exactly what his plot was.
Attacked you like he beat you up?
Attacked me as in like he raped me that night.
Oh, I'm so sorry,
It
Jen.
was in eighth
Wow.
grade, yeah.
And this was your
Um,
buddy, huh?
yeah, and the thing of it
That's
was is because I
awful.
couldn't tell anyone.
Uh-huh.
There were still points when like our parents would set up, like, oh, well, you're gonna go stay over at their house this weekend.
Oh,
Um, and yeah, it was pretty awful. The reason I don't say his name is karma caught up with him as he aged, and he actually, uh, if he is still alive, the last time that I encountered him, he had a terrible, terrible life. And I just kind of like, you know what? Karma did its thing. I'm not gonna. So
karma
that's why I don't
does.
know his name. Um,
Karma always does.
yeah, like that was like that's the instance where I'm like, yes, karma is a bitch. Is the true like this was the truest form of that, where it caught up with them and yeah,
Yeah, and there's nothing truer than karma, that's for sure.
yeah.
So sorry to
Um,
hear that, but I'm really glad to see that you've come out shining as as bright as you are now. That's amazing. So that
yeah.
was like your teens. So what happened in the 20s? Were you afraid after that? I would be afraid at least.
I was afraid after that. I would still venture out, and the next instance is also another tumultuous thing, but also has a very silver lining to it.
Okay.
Um, so throughout college or throughout high school and that, I was a comedian. I was like made people laugh because that's how I fit in, and it kept them from paying any closer attention to me. Or if they saw something that was maybe a little bit femme, they're like, "Oh, it's just Winslow, it's just the being a clown."
Yeah.
So I knew I could let that slide. Um, uh, when I ended up going to college, this was 1986. In fact, I just posted this on my Instagram. 1986, I was dressed as Jen, and I was loving the morning. It was, a morning of just freedom and bliss before I was to go to work that afternoon. And I drove over to Anderson, Indiana, which is a redneck town aside from us, but I'd been there before and it had never been a big deal. And this car was following me around in Anderson, black car with black windows. So I didn't
Sounds
notice it.
shady.
Yeah, and I didn't notice it at first. It was like the third stop that I made was when I noticed, like, oh, this car has been at every stop that I've been at. Like, this is kind of
Yikes.
weird. Um, but I was still just determined to have the best morning of my life. And so I was going to like my final stop, and it didn't open till like 10:30, 11 o'clock. So I was just sitting in my car waiting, for that 5 minutes till I could go in. Um, I saw the car parked in the parking lot, and I saw the guy get out. And he walked in front of my car and just stopped at the hood of my car and just looked and just stared me dead in the eyes,
Hmm.
um, through the windshield. And then he turned and walked back to his car. And I'm like, okay, my morning's done. I'm going home. So I start the car. I pull out of the parking lot, and no sooner did I pull out than here came some police sirens. And so what this guy was is he was an undercover cop or an unmarked cop or whatever, who
Uh-huh.
just happened to notice me and wanted to just be an ass. Um, so I get pulled over for an hour. I'm getting just harassed and belittled in this parking lot of a restaurant that still hurts me to go to when I go back home.
Oh,
Um,
man.
because in Indiana, uh, cross-dressing or dressing with clothing of the other gender was actually still on the books as being illegal,
What?
and it fell under
Whoa.
indecent exposure. Um,
Wow.
and it was one of those laws that they just never bothered to take off because we evolved past that. But this guy knew damn well that law was still there. Um, so so yeah, he had me taken downtown to the police station. So I get in that squad car. That guy berates me for 30 minutes driving downtown. Um, it's obvious that they called ahead to the station because we got to the station and then I'm being made fun of as soon as I walk through the door by not only the other police employees but also the public that's in the waiting area.
Sheesh.
Um, and they take me upstairs and I get stuck in an interrogation room. And for about 6 hours,
Ugh.
um, the door was
Wow, Jen.
closed. The door was closed, and I was hearing nothing but threats of bodily harm from the other side of that door. Um,
Wow.
Obviously, it was shut because they knew there's no way I couldn't identify anyone. I just knew that it was like several different voices, and there were threats of, beating the crap out of me, throwing me down in the holding cell so I could be shown how it felt to be a real woman, um, all those kinds of things. Um, and when the undercover cop, the detective came back in, and he'd been watching me through the mirror the whole time. I know he was. Um, he came back in and just sat and stared at me for a while, and then was like, I wasn't exactly sure in the beginning if you were a guy or not, but once I figured it out, I knew what you were doing, and I was like, I wasn't doing anything but shopping, sir. you know.
Oh
Um,
man.
and so he's like, he demanded that I get therapy. I didn't know he had no right to tell me that. I was terrified and I was like, yeah, okay. He goes, I need updates as you go through this because what you're doing is not right. So I had to call a cab to get my car. Cabby was brilliantly nice. He called me Miss and Ma'am the entire drive. When we went to get my car, he was like, I'm going to stay here because I want to make sure you get out okay.
Wow.
Um, and he got
This
out
was
of the,
after the interrogation?
yeah. So this was a cabbie that took me to get my car. Um,
Wow.
and this tow yard was in the middle of nowhere, Anderson, like surrounded by woods, middle of nowhere.
Sheesh.
So he got out of the car, he pulled his pistol out of his glove box, and he stood outside his car with it. Um, I went in. Of course, there are two guys working, and they immediately just start making fun of me. Um, and they called the woman to come out and help me. Her name was Mary. She came out, kept apologizing for them and the way they were acting. And she goes, let me just get you taken care of. Let's get your car. You look good, by the way. And
Oh, she was being supportive, huh?
she really was. And so I got the car, pulled out, stopped, gave the cabbie like a huge tip and a huge freaking hug. And
Oh,
he was like open to it. And I thanked him because I knew that I at least had the security if
great.
something happened.
Mm-hmm.
Um, longer story shorter, I did find a therapist at my college. Um, First thing she asked when I started talking to her was, do you want to get rid of this or do you want to embrace it? And I was like, well,
Wow.
I want to embrace it. And she's like, good, because you can't get rid of it. This is a part of who you are, and we can grow to understand that.
Wow. That's amazing. And what a
So
great question, too.
yeah, I just like I'm so upset because I don't remember her name. I had no record of her name because I've always wanted to reach out and just be like, I
Say
know I'm
prayers to her.
not,
Pray to
I'm like,
her. Yeah.
um, so technically that was the beginning of my trans journey. The seed was there, it sprouted and grew, uh and then I fell in love. uh I fell in love and got married, and it took a 22-year detour.
Wow. 22-year detour.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was really good. We had a very open communication. She knew from the get-go um all about me.
Uh-huh.
um she was very supportive, very supportive. And what ended up happening as it became less theoretical and more, this is going to happen, um she never swayed from her support. I still have her support today. Um, but it became very clear, she's like, I'm not a lesbian, and I'm not going to be able to do this. So we had a no contest divorce, and it hurt. It hurt like hell, but I couldn't blame her
Yeah.
for it. I mean,
Right.
I knew I was the same person,
Mm-hmm.
but I understand the physical attraction
Sure.
to
Sure.
the body of the person.
So you say that she was supportive. How? In what ways did she support you?
Oh my God. Um, uh, she just she was just phenomenal. We would go, because again, this was still partial being Jen. So there, I'd go to work as my male self, my androgynous male self, and I would come home, and it would be Jen and my wife.
Mm-hmm.
Um, her name is Joy. I don't want to just keep saying my ex or my wife. Her name is Joy.
Okay.
And so she just got to the point where she's like, well, let's go out. Let's I don't like going to clubs, but let's go have dinner, let's go do this. And so she was really instrumental in bringing.
Meaning, as you dressed as Jen, is that what
Yeah,
she means by that? Oh, wow,
yeah.
that is very instrumental.
And what I found the most amazing in my small town was that nobody really thought badly, at least openly,
Mm-hmm.
about what I was doing. Like there was a waitress at our favorite restaurant who just freaking adored me, uh, and it was wonderful. And she would sit and she would ask us questions, and she would really want to find out more, and not like intrusive questions, just like I'd like to know more.
Mm-hmm.
All of our friends knew, and we had it was a knitting group on Friday nights, but literally it was just people that sat around and drank at someone's
Uh-huh.
apartment on
Uh-huh.
Friday night. Very little knitting got done.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I mean, it was all women, and I was just one of them.
And that probably felt pretty amazing.
It did, and that's I found my goth crowd at the same time.
Uh-huh.
And the goth crowd,
Oh yeah, they welcome you.
oh
Huh?
my God, like they
And I
just
love the goth crowd too. They're just so
uh,
welcoming.
yeah. So yeah, the goth crowd, like all of these that were just so instrumental. And among my friends that knew at the time, it was never an issue. It was you know
Mhm.
just never an issue.
So after 22 years, Joy just said, you need to, what did she tell you? What happened after
So,
22
so she's
years?
like, she goes, I'm not going to be able to do this. So we need to, figure this out and move on. She moved in with her parents most of the week for the last 2 years. We were technically married,
Mhm.
but she'd still come, back home and that. And it was, we were basically just roommates at that point that slept in the same bed. Um, and uh, but she goes, let's get you a therapist. Let's, I'm here.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And so, we did. I found a therapist or counselor in Indianapolis. But it was funny because by the time I got into a counselor, I had kind of already figured it all out on my own. um, and he thought I had actually already transitioned when I came in. And I was like, no, I need you for this.
I first heard the term transgender probably about maybe 12 years ago or maybe less than that. When did you hear that term transgender?
Uh, I probably heard it probably looking like 2005, 2006 is when I started hearing it pop up. Um, through I mean, mainly through trans like sites. There's a Pink News, I think, was maybe the first place that I heard it. And it was these people from these bigger cities that were using this terminology that I'm like, oh,
Uh-huh.
give me like this. This is my
Yeah.
time. This I'm gonna
It's like
hang out.
candy, huh?
Um, and yeah, so that was just the biggest thing. It hurt, and we celebrated our 22nd anniversary, and 5 days later we filed for divorce.
Oh, geez.
and the divorce took place. The divorce was finalized on April 1st.
Oh man, like if that's really a joke, right?
But I embrace that and I find the humor in that.
And how did what? And you said you have how many kids? Two kids?
I have one child
Okay.
who's absolutely amazing. We actually grew closer during the transition, and they came out as non-binary
Hmm.
2 years ago uh,
Wow.
at 28. So um, we're just like as close as you would ever want to be with your kid. I mean, just like best friends at this
That's
point.
wonderful. So you're saying that you got closer to your kid when you came out.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Um, because I think for me, when I came out, and I think a lot of us can relate to this. I was already a happy person, but when I came out, like my happiness was through the freaking roof because
Mm-hmm.
that burden of energy that it took to hide who I
Right.
was wasn't there anymore. So I had all of a sudden I had what felt like 300% more energy in my body.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that had to come out, that had to show itself in personality and involvement. And I mean, and I was involved with my kid like from birth,
Mm-hmm.
like we would run around and play Star Wars laser tag in the backyard. I
That
mean,
sounds fun.
I was the kid. I've never grown up. And I refuse to. Uh, and so yeah, it just brought us so much closer together, and the relationship between them and Joy was a little tumultuous.
Hmm.
Um, Joy didn't have the best mother to have as a role model, so it was actually difficult for her to really mother. And I had a great mom, despite my conservative upbringing. And my dad was nothing but love. So everything that I had known in my life, I gave then to my child. And I was just like, I will be supportive of everything you want to do. I will love you. I will protect you. And so then when I came out and I just became like an even more robust person, it
Yeah.
just, it just,
More full force.
yeah.
And how's your relationship now with Joy?
It's really good now. We don't talk as much as we used to. I mean, when we got divorced and I moved out here in 2013, we talked every day. Um, she's gotten remarried, so that cuts down on that everyday conversation.
Hmm.
Uh, so we go probably like 3 or 4 months, um, maybe with just a text here and there. But we'll still talk to one another. It's still a really good conversation between us. Um, and and her husband's okay. He's a typical Indiana guy,
Hmm.
but he's not said anything negative about me.
Well, that's good.
I
I'm
also
glad
think
that
that
you have that support.
he
Seriously.
also knows that she would kick his ass.
So when did you actually start transitioning physically?
Yeah. So it was that same year that we got divorced. So February 18th of 2013, I took my first hormones. I
Wow.
showed up to Target as Jen. So I transitioned on their sales floor. Um, and that was it. So it was the timeline is funny. The timeline goes February 18th, uh, hormones going full time as Jen. February 18th or February 23rd, 22nd anniversary, February 28th, file for divorce.
Oh man.
And then July of that year, I moved to California. So it was a lot of stuff to do all at once, but it was a good move.
That is a good move. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. And how has it been with like your other family members when you
Um,
transitioned?
so it was really cool when I came out to mom and dad. My mom was full of the "What did I do wrong?" questions.
Oh yeah, I heard my parents do that stuff too. Yep.
And she couldn't get like, what did I do? Was it this? Was it that? She was like, is it because you were circumcised? And I'm like, mom, I don't want to
Yeah,
talk
yeah,
about
that did it.
that. I don't want to talk about it, but no, they had
Yeah.
nothing to
Yeah.
do.
Oh man.
my dad said, my dad said the most amazing thing. And again, we're talking like 10 minutes after coming out to them. He just looked at my mom and was like, look, this is the way God made her.
Yeah.
So immediately, proper pronouns. Um,
Wow.
when I got done coming out to them and I was leaving to go elsewhere, I got the first two-armed hug from my dad that I had ever
Whoa.
gotten. I was 47.
Wow.
Um, I'd always got, I'd always knew he loved me. But he always got the bro hug, the hug.
Yeah.
You tap the back 3 times,
Oh
and
man.
it's time to let
Yeah.
go. um, but yeah, he just like he grabbed me and like he wouldn't let go, and he was crying. Which is really only like the third time in my life I've seen my dad cry.
That's really
Um,
beautiful.
and I'm just like, Dad, you stop crying. He's like, you can't tell me what to do. I'm gonna cry because I'm happy, and I feel bad for you because of it took this long. And
Right.
um, and he was like, he goes, if anyone else in the family, aunts and uncles, he goes, I'm the oldest. He goes, and they will all have to answer to me if anyone has a problem with this.
That is hands down to that for sure. Wow.
um, but and so they're really cool with it. My mom has got some mental issues now. Like she's forgotten how to do many things. Even getting out of a car, she has forgotten how to close the door.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
So it's
That's
um,
tough to deal with for sure. That's really tough to handle.
it's
It's tough
tough.
to witness.
I'm so glad I came out when I did. Um,
Yeah.
and what I love the most is the church and the school that I grew up in. I went to the church's school until 10th grade. There were three of us that found each other, and we became really close friends. We never talked about anything, but we found each other, and we were inseparable friends. Um, about a year or two ago, I'm talking to my parents, and they're like, "Oh, such and such and their partner." We were talking to their mom, and I was like, wait a minute. I said, you said partner, like
What does
business
that mean?
or
Yeah.
life partner? My mom, my mom and dad were like, oh no, he came out as gay, and I'm like, ah.
Yeah.
And that's when I found out. And then like the other of us three
Uh-huh.
also came out. And so now for my parents to be in their 80s, and they're very good friends with my friend that just came, that had come out. um they have something to talk about that isn't church related, that isn't narrow, that is like, what more love can we give to our kids?
That's
um
so beautiful. I love it.
and I'm just like, oh my God, like we found each other, and none of us, we knew but we didn't know, like our souls found each other.
This sounds like a really soulful spiritual journey that you've gone through.
It really is. And and despite like the hardships, I mean, that's what made me who I am. And although I'm still the shy kid, I'm still an introvert, I do have an underlying confidence
Mhm.
um that I've been told I have. I never recognized it in myself. But I've been told enough times that I'm like, I embrace it now, and I'm like, okay, that's totally cool. If you say I'm confident, I'm confident. That's awesome.
Yeah, you are. For sure. I love it. So
So
going back to how you had hardships and it's very very hard still for some people today. What
yeah.
kind of advice, I mean, given your awesome experience through all these different generations, what kind of advice can you give this generation for either MTF or FTM
Yeah.
questioning whether or not they are trans?
Well, to quote Jurassic Park, life will find a way.
Yeah.
And and for me, that totally is exactly it. It's I embraced it when I embraced it because that was the time for me to embrace it. Um, and yes, you know, I'd spent years trying to hold a family together. I didn't want to do this because I was afraid how it would affect family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it, it's not a race. It's a journey. It's an experience. It's an adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I, you know, my favorite band in the world is a band called Rush, and they have,
Yeah.
you know, and one of the lyrics in their songs is the point of the journey is not to arrive. Anything can
Mm-hmm.
happen. So that's it. It's not a race. It's a journey. And all along this, since I started taking hormones, I have just marveled at the biology and what happens to my body as I've introduced these other entities into it.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of people like kind of hate the feelings and that because you know it's second puberty and it's not fun.
Mm-hmm.
But like I would like make note of like, oh my God, like what happened that made me just completely break down and cry for 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
or I feel like I have to cry, but I don't want it to be associated with something sad. So I would find a movie that I liked that was either ridiculously happy or whatever, so I could associate something else with those tears.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but just yeah, it's not a race. Don't speed to a finish line. Just embrace your journey. Find friends that are supportive. If your family is not supportive, your friends are your chosen family.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not supportive, find people who are.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the people that are going to matter for you. Um, we have the internet, so it's a much smaller world now
Right.
to find other people. And it's just do that. Find your uh, influences and inspirations where you can, if they're not in your immediate circle.
I love it. Thank you so much, Jen. I also had another question. So you were married to a woman. Does that mean that you still date women?
So since coming out, I completely identify as pan,
Uh-huh.
or bi, whichever you want to say. I know.
Yeah, I was gonna say because a lot of our listeners, I'm not sure they would all know what pan is. How can we describe what pan means to
Well,
people that don't know?
what I say in my stand up routine is I'm pan. Does not mean that I have an affinity for cookware. It means that I can be attracted to whomever. Gender does not matter um, at all. Uh, and I used bisexual for the longest time, but then to
Mhm.
me that felt very binary.
Yeah, that
So
feels very squared, boxed in.
it felt very biological as well. So I'm kind of like, well, it feels like
Yes.
I'm leaving other people out.
Uh-huh.
So for me with pan, that just means freaking everybody.
Yeah.
Men of trans experience, women of trans experience. I love. That's what I do. I love.
That's that is the most universal language of all time.
Yes, it is.
Thank you, Jen, for being so universal with me. I appreciate it. And thanks for your time. Wow, this has been an amazing interview. Everybody, if you want to follow Jen on Twitter, she's at Jen Slow Win. Her IG is at Jen Slow 66. Thanks so much, Jen, for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
And I'd like to invite you in the near future again.
Yes, I am always available.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Take care. Love you.